The goal of this project was to become familiar with the process of conducting a qualitative ethnographic study. This process was conducted in the online virtual world Second Life. Being familiar with the ethnographic process will allow any researcher to develop a robust description of any culture. While immersed in Second Life, through observing and interviewing, I came to understand how individuals within the Second Life ferry crossing subculture construct meaning. The purpose of the study is to explore how one ferry crossing resident describes her experiences and her role in ferry crossing. Two research questions guiding the study are: what is the participant's prior experiences in ferry crossing, and how does this participant describe her role in ferry crossing? What I found most intriguing about ferry crossing was how newbie-friendly the simulated environment, or sim, actually was. Not being familiar with Second Life, I made sure to visit the few newbie-friendly sim recommendations under the search option. Other newbie-friendly sims were either not friendly as advertised, or were unattended by residents. When you arrive at the gateway to ferry crossing, you are immediately greeted by a larger-than-life welcome sign. Other important signage includes an invitation to join a newcomer group, and arrows pointing the way to the Learning Grove, an interactive gallery walk to help newbies become savvy with the technological ins and outs of Second Life. I took advantage of both. Topics of instruction in the Learning Grove include moving, camming, changing appearances, interacting, building, and etiquette. Additionally, freebies were made available to newbies in the Learning Grove, as well as in the ferry market. Ferry crossing also holds weekly building classes and provides a sandbox area to practice building. I greatly appreciated the newbie friendliness of ferry crossing, especially since I had no prior experience with ferry crossing, much less Second Life. While touring ferry crossing, I came across the event lodge, which housed a calendar of events. There were at least 9 hours of regular events each week in ferry crossing. By attending regular events and special events, a perk of joining an additional group, I logged approximately 40 hours over 30 days in ferry crossing. Some examples of regular events include Bardic Circle, Celtic Dancing, Free Day Dance, Moon Day Dance, and Luminosity. Special events were held at Chiaroscura, Castle Visconti, Elf Harbor, and Madrigal Ballroom. Additionally, I accumulated over 50 note cards containing local chats, instant messages, and general information. I also collected over 80 snapshots and maintained a field journal for my notes. The crux of my data collecting experiences included a 1-hour interview with a very talented resident ferry crossing DJ, which yielded 10 pages of transcription data. To avoid interruptions, I carried out this interview at ISTE Edu Island. Through this interview, the participant described her first experiences in ferry crossing, her roles as a meter, protector, and events committee member in ferry crossing, a DJ's role in event planning, ferry terminology, and special festivals. One example of a special festival includes the Samhain Festival, a celebration of the end of harvest and the beginning of winter. One theme that emerged from my ethnographic study of ferry crossing is that ferries love to dance. Sponsors, planners, places, times, and reasons for dances are widely varied, but types of dances only slightly vary from dance to dance. Types of dances include bubble dances, sky dances, bubble seat dances, singles dances, couples dances, grounded dances, and special event dances, in which the choreography usually matches the theme and music of a dance. A second theme that emerged from the study is that ferry crossing is a perpetual Renaissance fair. Anything you could expect to see at a Renaissance fair, you could expect to see in ferry crossing. These sights and sounds include attire and accessories unique to the Renaissance period, playing acoustic musical instruments and folksy sing-alongs, performances of theater, poetry recitation, and storytelling, seasonal rituals, and elements of fantasy including fairies, elves, and mermaids. I think most aspects of this project went well for me, considering not having any experience with ethnographic studies or fairy culture. Overall, I have enjoyed my time spent in ferry crossing and look forward to returning for the occasional special event.
The purpose of this study was to research a subculture in the Second Life community. I created an avatar by the name of TM54, and prior to selecting my subculture, I had to learn to navigate Second Life. I visited a few events and spent time shopping for different skin color, hair, clothing, and accessories that would hide the fact that I was a newbie. I began my journey in Second Life as an off-the-shelf rocker newbie avatar and then changed my clothing in an attempt to fit in and be accepted. After I found the subculture that I wanted to study for my mini ethnography using the event tab, I realized that I would once again need to change my attire to abide by the dress code of the club. Sweethearts Jazz Ballroom had a strict dress code, and they preferred formal attire. I knew that I had to conform to the environment in order to be accepted, and this meant that I needed to dress appropriately. I shopped for new hair, skin color, eye color, a dress, shoes, and jewelry. I had attained a prim skirt and matching mini skirt and matching blouse, as well as an ankle-tie stiletto heels, and was loving my new long blonde beach-inspired updo. I was ready to teleport back to Sweethearts. Each visit was entertaining and brought new people, music, and attire. I enjoyed watching the couples dancing and the single dancing, and I was very entertained by the local chat. It was a friendly yet elegant environment, and although the DJs changed frequently, they were always very welcoming. They had 2 terraces that looked out over the water, and the feel of the club was very romantic. During my first few visits, I mostly observed others' behavior and conversations, but as I became more comfortable, I began to engage in local and private chat as well as dance by myself. I learned that you had to have a hub, then you could touch the gold heart above the couple's dance floor to dance with a partner, or you could touch the multicolored disc above the DJ's booth to dance by yourself. The couples dancing flowed and glided across the dance floor just as you would expect in First Life. I didn't know the specifics of dancing with another, so I decided to attempt to dance by myself. I touched the multicolored disc and chose what type of dance I would like, and shortly after, my skirt disappeared and the avatar next to me asked me to quit hitting him. It was a disaster. I was able to put my prim skirt back on and choose a different dance. I was sent instant messages by many men during this time, but I chose to ignore most of them and just talk with women avatars. On one of my visits, I noticed that a gorgeous avatar wearing a gaudy ball gown was walking off the DJ stand, and she was introducing a new DJ. Because I was curious as to how often the DJs changed, I decided to send her an instant message. I began to chat with Leanna Baringborough, and a while later she accepted my request to interview. She revealed that she had been part of Sweetheart Jazz Ballroom for more than 4 years, and she had been a DJ here for almost a year. She provided insight into how you dance as a couple and why you dance by yourself, the importance of the image of a hostess, and why the design of the environment is so important. Throughout my time in Second Life and in Sweethearts, I learned a lot about the different aspects of qualitative research and my abilities as a researcher. Not only did I experience being part of a culture that I am not familiar with, but I was also introduced to interviewing. I had a list of questions prepared, and they aided in the process, but I realized that it is important to also base questions from the answers provided by the participants. When I began analyzing, I realized I had opportunities to build questions from answers that were provided. The study allowed me to be immersed into a society that was unfamiliar and an opportunity to conduct research, all while learning the foundations of qualitative research in a safe environment.
When I first joined Second Life for a mini ethnography project, and since some of my favorite books are from the Twilight Saga, I created a vampire avatar. At the beginning, as to be expected, I struggled with the new technology. For this first avatar, I struggled with changing her clothes, teleporting to different islands, and determining direction with the arrow keys. After visiting several 80s and jazz clubs, I quickly realized my vampire avatar did not fit in. Sadly, I took off her fangs and darkened her skin. Through my continuous struggles with teleporting, I accidentally landed on the first level of the island called Brutal District. Here, I found an array of outrageous characters, monsters, aliens, ghouls, and women provocatively dressed carrying swords and machine guns. As I explored the first level, I found a weapons store called Brutal Weapons and a hospital called Brutal Care. On the lower level of Brutal District, I was quickly introduced to a fear-provoking and distressing sounds of rapid gunfire, screaming, cursing, grunting, and blades whipping. Dead bodies scattered throughout, and some were in pieces. Panic and anxiety rose within me, and I did only what any other qualitative researcher would do when finding the most unusual community of violent, murdering residents. I reattached my fangs, purchased weapons, and explored the island further. Despite my fear of death, I spent weeks of researching, exploring, and collecting photographic artifacts. I was basically ignored by the other residents. Although I was ignored, I still feared another resident would try to kill me. I did not know how to fight back or use my fighting or healing powers. After drained of being ignored, I finally decided to become an actual citizen of Brutal District, and residents finally began to interact with me. My nickname became the Reporter, because I was always taking pictures of the fighting and the dead bodies. I was invited to join a couple dancing near Brutal District's radio station. One monkey character jumped on a red bike and began to ride around so that I could take pictures of her. These instances of interaction gave me hope that I would find someone who would take the time to allow me an interview. I was also comforted in the fact that as long as I stayed in the non-combative mode, I could not be killed, although several characters tried. After collecting many photographic artifacts, dialogue between the residents, and journaling daily, I finally found a citizen willing to allow me to interview. Her name was Caitlin, and she wore a Darth Vader-ish costume that was quite intimidating. Nevertheless, she was kind and very helpful in answering all of my questions, sometimes while battling even other residents. When the interview was over, I asked her to do one more favor for me. I found it unfortunate to have spent all this time in a violent island like Brutal District and not have at least experienced death. I asked her to kill me. She graciously accepted. First, she blinded me, which did not actually blind me but prevented me from being able to use any of my powers on her. Then she paralyzed me to prevent me from being able to fight back. Finally, she took several steps back and shot numerous bullets through me. I collapsed, dead. Although shockingly alarmed at this violence, I was extremely excited. I laughed and thanked her for her help. She truly was happy she had helped me and thoroughly enjoyed the killing. She dragged me to the hospital where I could begin the recovery process. Through this mini ethnography project, I learned a lot about qualitative research and myself as a researcher and a person. I learned that violence could be fun in a safe, controlled environment. I learned that I enjoyed violence in a safe, controlled environment. But the most enlightening lesson I learned about qualitative research was explained by Glesny. He wrote, "An immersion in and connection to other lives do not occur without tensions and problems. Immersing into an unfamiliar setting can be anxiety-producing. Expect to feel like a somewhat awkward newcomer." Glesny was right when he wrote, "Anxiety can be a companion, but it can also compromise your work." I almost compromised my own work and would have never realized how much fun it was to be a part of such a violent community because of my own fears and anxiety of death.